Hey guys, it's me again. I'm sorry I'm still out, but I'm enjoying, I'm sure, my time with the baby. I know I shot this all in the future, so who knows. Today we're going to talk about who actually rules a government and what are some different structures of government. And so today I actually want you to really take your time on this. If you're confused, if you get behind while taking notes, please ask the substitute to stop and rewind it back or pause it so that you can write everything down, because this is actually a really important lesson today. Now, before we go any further, I actually want you to take a moment and copy this chart down. And there's intentionally some blank spaces on there. And actually, underneath the video here, it says all. So there's 4 groups set up. There's no one's in charge, one person's in charge, a few people are in charge, or everybody's in charge. And I want you to take a moment, copy this chart down, and then actually try to fill it in yourself with the information you learned from your Who Rules packet from the first day. Okay, so now you've had a moment to fill in the chart based on how you think it actually works out. Let's look at it. So if nobody's in charge, it's considered anarchy, right? No one's in charge, it's chaos. That would be the idea that Hobbes was talking about. One person's in charge, it would be an absolute monarchy or a dictatorship. A few people are in charge, an oligarchy, or what is known as a junta, which is kind of a military dictatorship. And a democracy is when all people are in charge. And there's 2 forms of democracy. There's a direct democracy and a representative democracy. Remember, all governments have leadership, but it comes in different forms. So the first real government that we're going to talk about is monarchy. And monarchies come in 2 forms as well. All right, so most of these are going to have 2 different forms. A monarch that is an absolute monarch is somebody who has total and complete power. Remember, almost they can flex their muscle all the time. That's Louis XIV. That's Peter the Great. That's Henry VIII. All right. Your limited monarchies are going to be monarchies that have to share power. Think of that petition of right that Charles I had to sign. Right. He had to give away some of his powers. William and Mary agreed to have a limited monarchy because they would share power with Parliament. Right. Most monarchs today are actually not really in power. For instance, the King and Queen of England, right, Queen Elizabeth, she is what's known as a figurehead, which means she's just kind of a popular person. She's an important individual, kind of like the Kardashians, except for, a little more dignified. But they don't really have much power other than they can just kind of use their influence to say, hey, I think you should do this, or I think we should do that, right? Some titles for monarchs are king and queen, emperor or empress, or even czar and czarina, who we've already been introduced to once. Another government system that we have to talk about that also, oddly enough, has 2 forms is a dictatorship. All right, dictators take power by force. And remember, the difference between an absolute monarch and a dictator is, in an absolute monarchy, we know who is going to be the successor. We know that you're going to inherit power from your family to become king or queen. In a dictatorship, we actually have no clear line of succession. We don't know who is going to be next. All right. Now, there are 2 forms, as I said. There is one, which is an autocracy. That means one person sits at the top and rules completely in a dictatorship, similar to an absolute monarchy. This would be your Adolf Hitlers of the world, or your Kim Jong-uns, or Kim Jong-il, right? They have absolute power. They lead the government by themselves. They make all decisions. There is the second form, which is what's known as an oligarchy. And that might be a hard word to say, but I want you to think of it this way. Think of oligarchy. It almost sounds like all, as in all of us, meaning all of us are going to run this country together. So, for instance, an oligarchy would be if me, the leader of the class, decided to band together with you guys, and we all go and we overthrow the school. We throw Mr. Shawless out, we throw Mrs. Parrish out, right? And we take over and we run the school, and we tell those puny 6th graders once and for all what it really means to be a Lake Ridge Academy student, right? We make all the rules. We run everything. We can only vote for each other, right? The 6th graders have no power. The 8th grade is kicked out the door, right? But we run this country, our newfound country, together. That is an oligarchy. That is similar to what the Soviet Union had under Joseph Stalin, which we will talk about next unit when we talk about economic systems. We talk about capitalism and communism. A small group leads. Usually it has one person who's kind of the figurehead at the top, but that person delegates power and has other people help them in an oligarchy. The third type of government is a democracy, and this is the one you should probably be the most familiar with. In a democracy, the people are in charge. Remember, democracy, demos, the Greek word for people, and then ocracy means to rule. So it literally means people rule. The power comes from us, right? If we don't like what our elected officials do, we vote them out of office, right? We give them the power because we give them the vote. It's almost like, if you want to think of it, that social contract is kind of like voting. When you vote, you're agreeing with that person that if they are elected, their job is to protect your rights and make sure that they're doing as they're supposed to. There are two types of democracies. One is a direct democracy, which means people would vote on everything. For instance, in that government that we talked about earlier, and we decided to have a democracy, right? If we voted on everything we wanted to do and everybody had to vote at all times, that would be a direct democracy. The other form of democracy is a representative or an indirect democracy. And what this means is, instead of voting for every bill and every law and everything that the government wants to do, instead you vote for somebody to represent you and go vote. In the United States, the majority of the time we have a representative democracy, which means we vote for our senators and our members of the House of Representatives. We vote for governors and mayors and elected officials and presidents, right? To go and make laws and make decisions based on us and what we want, right? We don't go actually vote for all those laws. Now, sometimes we do vote for laws. So we actually kind of have a weird hybrid system where sometimes we have a direct democracy, right? We might vote for a levy, for instance. At election time, you always see these signs up that say, vote for issue 2 or vote for issue 4, right? That's a direct democracy. That's us voting for a law to make it official, right? But we also go vote for President of the United States or Senator or member of the House of Representatives, meaning we have a representative democracy. So we actually have both in the United States. And that's really important to remember because we don't just vote for laws and we don't just vote for people. We vote for both here. And while we don't vote for every law, that's why elections are so important. Because if we voted for every law, we would spend all of our time voting. But as a result, we vote for representatives who go off and make those laws for us. And if they don't do what we want, we throw them out of office. The final form of government is what is known as a theocracy. All right? Theocracy means religious rule. So just like how we talked about democracy meaning people rule, right? Theo comes from the word theology, which means the study of religion, right? And ocracy means to rule, right? So theocracy means religion is kind of in charge. Now, Rousseau somewhere would be, or not Rousseau, sorry, Voltaire is rolling in his grave somewhere of the idea of a theocracy, because remember, he said church and state should be separated and that, the government should not favor one religion over another. But in a theocracy, religion is kind of laid on top of the government and things are done based on religious beliefs and teachings. It's a system of government where any religion can be a theocracy. So, for instance, you can have Christian theocracies like Puritans, right? The Pilgrims who came to the United States set up a religious Puritan theocracy, right? You can have a Muslim theocracy like in Iran and Saudi Arabia, where there is a religion that overrides almost all laws, right? You could have a Catholic theocracy like the Pope in the Vatican City in Rome, right? And so it can be any religion and take on any form of government. It can be a religious theocracy that is also an oligarchy or a democracy, as long as everybody votes for it. Israel, for instance, is a type of democratic theocracy where they use Jewish law to help kind of guide the country, but the citizens vote on things and have the right to stand up for themselves and speak out if they don't like what's going on. Some examples of theocracies would be in Buddhism, you have the Central Tibetan Administration and the Dalai Lama who runs that. That is a Buddhist theocracy. In Islam, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and Yemen are all Islamic theocracies. And finally, in Christianity, the Vatican City, the Byzantine Empire. We talked about them once before. And then also the Puritans under John Calvin. Remember, the idea of Calvinism and Oliver Cromwell later making Puritanism kind of the official governing rule of Great Britain before the English or after the English Civil War. All of these are theocracies. It can be any religion and it can be any government. So one final look at our chart here, it kind of starts to make sense, right? You can see that in anarchy, there is no government. In a monarchy, absolute monarchies and autocracies can be those when one person is in charge. When a few people are in charge, an oligarchy, which is a form of a dictatorship, and a junta, right? We'll get back to that one, don't worry. And then in a democracy, everybody's in charge, and that has 2 forms. And so that's it. If you have any questions, please make sure you ask the sub or you send me an email tonight, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Continue working on your government and your DIY governments. Those are actually due next Wednesday, which that means I will see you in class on Monday and Tuesday. You can ask me any questions, and we can have some time in class to finish those up. If you have any other questions, please make sure you write them down or send me an email. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all later. Bye, everybody.